Come a little closer, adventurers. The mountains may be quiet now, but not long ago, high in the Himalayas, Operative Anika stepped into an ancient temple carved from living stone. You saw her cross the threshold. But what happened next is a story best told slowly. Tonight we journey beyond the doorway, into shadowed corridors, sacred symbols, and a lesson far more powerful than treasure. Because this isn't just a story about a relic. It's a story about balance, about choices, about understanding that some things in this world aren't meant to be owned, but honored. And as the firelight flickers and the wind moves softly beyond our walls, let's return to that mountain temple and discover what the Trident of Shiva was truly meant to reveal. The airstream up here didn't blow. It searched. It slid between jagged rocks, tugged at Anika's ponytail, and rattled the prayer flags tied to a bent cedar pole like a distant warning. Far below her, the mountains fell away into pine and cloud. Above her, the sky looked close enough to touch sharp and pale as broken glass. Anika adjusted the strap of her small pack and studied the stone staircase carved into the cliff. It wasn't wide. It wasn't safe. And it wasn't even clearly a staircase anymore. But it was the only path to the temple. Secret Agent X's message still hummed in her mind from earlier that morning, projected as a soft blue silhouette above her tablet, voice calm as always, like a lighthouse in fog. Anika, he had said, we have a situation developing in the high ranges near Kedarnath. She remembered the way she'd paused mid-step, sock in one hand, boot in the other. Kedarnath wasn't just a place on a map. It was a name that carried weight, altitude, devotion, stories older than ink. A storm? She had asked, half joking, because mountains always came with storms. Not weather, Secret Agent X replied. People. Anika had tightened her ponytail. That means the plunderers. Yes. Even through the hologram's haze, she could feel his seriousness sharpen. A relic has surfaced in local whispers, he continued. If the plunderers learn of it, they'll move quickly. A relic? Anika asked, already sliding her feet into her boots. What kind? Secret Agent X's image flickered, as if the air itself was cautious about what came next. The Trishul of Shiva, he said. Anika froze. Not fear, not doubt. Reverence. Shiva's trident? She whispered. Correct, Secret Agent X replied. In Shaivite tradition, the Trishul is not a trophy and not a weapon of conquest. It is a symbol of balance. The three prongs are often understood as the three fundamental forces: creation, preservation, and transformation, or the triad of past, present, and future, or the three qualities of nature: sattva, rajas, tamas, clarity, action, and inertia. Different teachings emphasize different layers. Anika had swallowed. So which one is this? Possibly all of them, Secret Agent X said. That's what sacred objects do, they hold meaning without insisting on only one meaning. She loved that about him. He never sounded like he was trying to win an argument. He sounded like he was trying to keep a truth safe. Here is what we know, he continued. Long ago, when the temple was built into the mountain, caretakers sealed the Trishul away, not to hide it from devotion, but to protect it from ambition. Because people started wanting it, Anika said. Yes, some believed that holding the Trishul meant holding power over others. Secret Agent X's voice cooled slightly. But Shiva's symbols don't work that way. When someone tries to own what represents balance, they create imbalance. Anika looked down at her hands, suddenly aware of how easy it was to close fingers around something and call it mine. And if the plunderers steal it? She asked. Secret Agent X paused. Then the mountain may not collapse, he said carefully. But the community will suffer. Pilgrims will feel fear where there should be peace, caretakers will be threatened, and the plunderers will sell a lie, that sacred things are just expensive things. Anika's jaw tightened. If it's sacred, it needs to stay where it belongs. Proceed with respect, Secret Agent X said. Recover it only if the temple is compromised. And Anika, remember this. Shiva is not worshipped because he destroys the world. He is revered because he destroys what is false, ego, greed, cruelty, illusion. Your goal isn't to punish the thieves. It's to stop the lie. Anika had nodded once. Careful is my specialty. Now, standing at the first crumbling step, she let herself be quiet for a moment. Not fear, just reverence. Her grandmother's voice drifted up from memory like incense. Stories aren't just entertainment, Anika. They're maps. They tell you where the cliff is before you fall. Anika placed her palm against the cold stone. The temple had been built into the mountain long before anyone thought to write things down neatly. Its carvings were softened by wind and snow, but the shapes were still there, lotus petals, swirling lines, and the unmistakable outline of a trident. A Trishul. Not a decoration. A reminder. Anika inhaled and started climbing. The higher she climbed, the more the mountains seemed to listen. The air thinned. Her lungs worked harder. Her boots scraped ice hidden in shadow. Every few meters she paused to test the next foothold, tapping the stone with the butt of her flashlight like a careful drummer. When the stairs ended, the path became a ledge. When the ledge ended, the path became a rope bridge. Anika's stomach tightened. The bridge stretched over a gorge so deep it swallowed sound. 2 stone posts rose from either side, each carved with worn Devanagari script. Thick rope ran between them, sun-bleached and frayed in places. Wooden slats hung like ribs, some cracked, some missing entirely. She didn't rush. She checked the knots, she tested the ropes with slow pressure, she listened for creaks that sounded wrong. Then she stepped on. The bridge swayed immediately, as if insulted by her confidence. Anika spread her weight, knees soft, hands on the rope rails. Wind slapped her sideways in sudden bursts. Halfway across, a loose plank snapped under her heel. Her foot dropped through empty space. Time stretched. Anika didn't scream, she didn't flail. She let her body do what she had trained it to do. Her hands clamped down on the rope rails, her arms locked as she swung forward, letting momentum pull her back onto an intact slat. Her boot scraped the edge of the broken plank, and she kicked it away so it couldn't catch her foot again. The gorge below yawned, hungry and silent. Anika swallowed and kept moving. When her boots met solid stone on the far side, she exhaled once, steady, and looked up. The temple entrance stood before her like a mouth carved into the cliff. It wasn't grand in the way tourist temples were grand. No bright paint, no polished gold, no neat railings. This was older. 2 pillars framed the doorway, carved with faded guardians, dancers, and trident motifs repeating like a heartbeat. Vines clung to cracks. Frost glittered in the shadows. Across the threshold an iron chain hung low, strung with small bells. Anika did not touch it. Bells meant attention. She crouched, shining her light along the ground. Footprints. Not hers. Small rocks had been disturbed. Dust had been smeared. Someone had passed recently, maybe yesterday, maybe hours ago. The plunderers. Anika's jaw tightened. Of course, she murmured. They couldn't leave anything alone. She slipped inside. The air changed instantly, still and dry, as if the mountain held its breath here. Her flashlight beam cut through darkness, catching drifting dust like tiny stars. The floor sloped downward into a corridor of carved stone. Symbols lined the walls. Devanagari letters, worn by time, lotus spirals, sacred geometry, and tridents etched again and again. Anika moved slowly, scanning the ground. Temples built to protect something didn't rely on locks, they relied on lessons. A bend in the corridor revealed an archway with a shallow stone bowl set into the floor. Above it, faint words curved in the stone, worn but readable. A heart without steadiness becomes a storm. Anika frowned. A test. 3 narrow grooves ran from the bowl outward, channels designed to carry liquid. She pulled a small metal flask from her pack, not for drinking, for thinking. She poured a thin stream of water into the bowl. The water did not pool. It vanished straight down as if the bowl was a mouth. And then, slowly, the grooves in the floor began to glow, tracing 3 lines that formed a safe path beneath the archway. 3 lines. 3 prongs. Anika's pulse steadied. Okay. Steady heart. She stepped carefully along the glowing path and passed through the arch. No darts, no collapsing ceiling, no cinematic disaster. Just passage. Beyond the arch was a wide chamber, circular, with a ceiling that rose into darkness. Stone columns ringed the room like frozen trees. At the centre stood a pedestal carved from black rock, and behind it, mounted into the wall, was a massive relief of a Trishul 3 prongs, carved so deeply it looked like a shadow permanently stitched into stone. But the pedestal was empty. Anika's stomach dropped. She swept her flashlight beam across the floor. Drag marks. Something heavy had been moved. No, she whispered, voice tight. Then a faint clink echoed from the darkness. Anika froze. Not wind, not settling stone, a deliberate sound. She shut off her flashlight. Darkness swallowed her, but her eyes were already adjusted enough to catch it. A thin blade of moonlight fell through a crack in the ceiling, painting the floor silver. In that slice of light, 2 shapes moved. Human. Anika sank behind a column, breath controlled. 2 plunderers. Not close enough to see faces clearly, but she could see their outlines. Thin frames wrapped in scarves, hunched with urgency. They were tugging at something tall and bundled, wrapped in cloth. A trident. Even wrapped, it held a presence like the air around it refused to be ignored. One plunderer hissed, "Hurry, before the mountain changes its mind!" The other grunted, "It's heavy. Why is it so heavy?" Anika's fingers curled. Because you're carrying more than metal, she thought. You're carrying meaning. She needed a plan that didn't involve fighting. Fighting broke things. Fighting got loud. Fighting turned sacred places into battlegrounds. She scanned the chamber, the pedestal, the relief, the carved walls. Then she noticed something opposite the Trishul relief. A faint carving in the moonlight. A circle with a vertical mark. The third eye. Not a monster eye. A reminder. See clearly. Act rightly. Anika's gaze dropped to the floor near the pedestal. A shallow ring of stone with small holes, like sockets. Something belonged there. Her eyes flicked back to the entrance chain with bells. Anika's mind clicked. The bells weren't just for sound. They were for balance. She slipped out of the chamber and back through the corridor, moving like a shadow that meant no harm. At the temple entrance, she carefully unclipped 3 small bells and a short length of chain, cradling them so they wouldn't ring. As she worked, her grandmother's voice returned, not a scolding voice, a teaching voice. When people steal, they don't only take an object. They take trust. They take peace. They take the feeling that the world is safe. Anika looked down at the bells in her palm. They were simple old metal, worn smooth. Simple things could hold big truths. Back in the chamber, she moved toward the stone ring by the pedestal. The holes matched the size of the bell loops. She fitted the bells into the sockets, 1, 2, 3, like keys. Nothing happened. Anika frowned. Then she looked up at the relief. 3 prongs. 3 bells. But not just placed, aligned. She rotated the bells slightly until each bell faced 1 prong direction, like compass points. Still nothing. Her chest tightened. Not because she was failing, but because she realized the real test wasn't mechanical. It was moral. A heart without steadiness becomes a storm. She closed her eyes and slowed her breathing until the mountain's silence felt like it was inside her chest. Then she pressed her palm lightly to the pedestal and whispered, "Not a spell, not an order. A request. Let me do this the right way." The bells chimed. Not loudly. Softly, like the temple exhaled. Thin lines of light traced outward from the ring in the floor, spiraling toward the columns. The chamber seemed to change, not physically, but emotionally. The air became heavy with warning. The plunderers heard it too. "What was that?" one hissed. They turned toward the pedestal, their rapt trident shifting in their grip. Anika stayed behind the column, hidden. The glowing lines spread toward them. When the light reached their feet, they froze. Their shadows stretched long across the floor, climbing the walls, growing taller, wobbling like smoke. One plunderer stumbled back. It's watching!" Anika's stomach tightened, not triumph, not cruelty, just certainty. The temple wasn't attacking them. It was showing them what they were doing. Their fear made their shadows dance. Anika stepped out from behind the column, her voice calm and clear. "Put it down," she said. Both plunderers whipped around. For a second their faces caught the moonlight, wide-eyed, startled, more greedy than evil. People who had told themselves a story. "It's just a thing. We're just taking it. No one will know." But the temple knew. "You, who are you?" one demanded, trying to sound tough. Anika didn't raise her voice. "Someone who knows this doesn't belong in your hands." The plunderer tightened his grip on the bundle. "It's treasure!" Anika shook her head, slow. "It's not," he scoffed. "Everything is treasure if it's old enough." "No," Anika said, stepping closer along the glowing path. "Some things are sacred, some things are promises, and some things are warnings, like this place is warning you right now." The other plunderer's voice cracked. "We're not hurting anyone." Anika's gaze sharpened. "Stealing doesn't start with hurting. It starts with telling yourself it's okay." The first plunderer bristled. "You don't know anything about us." Anika's voice softened, not pitying, truthful. "I know you came here to take something that isn't yours." The wind slid through the ceiling crack then, pushing a low, chilling whisper through the chamber. The bells chimed again. The glowing lines brightened, and the shadows on the walls stretched into abstract shapes. No monsters, no faces, just fear made larger by their own choices. The plunderers stared at their shadows like they'd been betrayed by them. One swallowed hard. "It's cursed." Anika shook her head. "It's not cursed. It's clear." The plunderer holding the Trishul tugged harder, trying to pull it free like a stubborn stake. "Then why won't it come with us?" Anika took one more step closer. "Because you're trying to carry it like a prize." She glanced up at the Trishul relief carved into the wall. "Shiva's symbols don't belong to ego." The second plunderer blinked. "Ego?" Anika kept her voice steady. "The part of you that says, 'I deserve this. I'm special. I can take what others can't.' That part always lies." The first plunderer's face reddened beneath his scarf. "We're not lying. We found it." Anika's eyes didn't waver. "Finding something doesn't make it yours." The plunderers struggled for another breath then. In their panic, they stepped off the glowing lines onto the darker tiles. A low rumble vibrated through the chamber. Not a collapse. Not destruction. A correction. The darker tiles sank an inch with a dull thud, holding the plunderers in place like a stern hand on a shoulder. They yelped, trying to yank their feet free, but the stone refused. One cried, "It's grabbing us!" "No," Anika said, voice gentle but firm. "It's stopping you." Their eyes darted to her. "Make it stop!" Anika stepped forward, still on the glowing line. "Put the Trishul down." The first plunderer clenched his jaw. "No." Anika pointed at the shadows on the wall. "That's what stealing does. It makes your fear bigger than you. Bigger than the truth." The second plunderer's shoulders sagged. We didn't think it would." Anika cut in softly. "You didn't think about the people who protect this place. You didn't think about the kids who grow up hearing these stories. You didn't think about anyone but yourselves. The first plunderer's voice rose, cracking. We needed money. Anika's gaze stayed compassionate but unbending. Needing doesn't make stealing right. The wind whistled again. The bells chimed. The shadows stretched one last time, tall and trembling. The first plunderer's grip faltered. Fine, he snapped, voice breaking. Take it. Take your trident. They dropped the bundle. The moment it hit the stone, the glowing lines softened to a gentle pulse. The tiles rose back into place as if nothing had happened. The shadows returned to normal. The plunderers didn't wait. They scrambled toward the corridor, stumbling over themselves in their rush to escape. Anika watched them go without chasing. A mission wasn't always about catching someone. Sometimes it was about saving something. She approached the bundle on the floor. Up close, she could see the cloth wasn't just cloth. It was old and carefully wrapped, tied with knots that spoke of ritual, not secrecy. Anika knelt and unwrapped it slowly. The Trishul inside was simple. Not jeweled, not flashy. A dark handle worn smooth by time. 3 prongs rising like a question. Along the metal, faint inscriptions ran like a quiet song, symbols and lines that seemed to shift when she breathed, not because they moved, but because her mind did. It didn't glow. It didn't crackle. It just was. Solid. Present. Heavy with meaning. Anika didn't lift it like a prize. She lifted it like responsibility. Her hands trembled, not fear. Relief. And something deeper. The understanding that the right thing was often heavier than the easy thing. What now? She whispered. As if answering, the bells chimed once soft approval. Anika carried the Trishul to the pedestal and aligned it with the relief behind it. The moment the base settled into its mount, the air in the chamber shifted. The heaviness loosened. The mountain, still searching with its wind, now felt satisfied, like it had found what it was looking for. Anika exhaled. Only then did she realize her hands had been shaking. Not because she'd faced thieves, because she'd held something sacred and tried not to let her own pride touch it. She bowed her head, touching her forehead lightly in respect. Thank you, she said, not to metal, but to meaning, for reminding me. The symbols on the walls didn't glow, but they felt less like warnings and more like guidance. On her way out, she returned the bells to the entrance chain exactly where they belonged. Outside, the wind still searched, but it didn't feel hostile anymore. It felt alive. Anika crossed the rope bridge again carefully, steadily, heart calm. When her boots reached the far side, she looked back once. The temple entrance was just a shadow in the cliff now, as if it had never been there. Like myths, always real, always hidden, always waiting for the right person to listen. Anika pulled out her tablet and tapped the call icon. Secret Agent X shimmered to life, blue outline against the morning sky. Report, he said. Anika's voice was tired but steady. The temple was compromised. The plunderers tried to take the Trishul. And? Anika glanced back at the mountain. They didn't, she said. It remains where it belongs. A pause. Then Secret Agent X's voice softened by a fraction. Well done, Anika. She allowed herself a small smile. Can I ask you something? She said. Always. Why do people steal sacred things? Anika asked. I mean, they know it's wrong, don't they? Secret Agent X's hologram flickered, as if he was choosing his words the way you choose where to step on a rope bridge. Some people steal because they're desperate, he said. Some steal because they're greedy. But many steal for a quieter reason. They want to feel powerful. They think owning rare things will make the emptiness inside them go away. Anika looked down at her gloves. It doesn't. No, Secret Agent X agreed. Stealing gives a person a moment of excitement, but it leaves a longer shadow. It trains the heart to believe it can take what it wants without consequence. Anika remembered the shadows on the wall, fear made tall. "Then what's the cure?" she asked. Secret Agent X's voice was calm. "Truth," he said, "and humility. Shiva's lessons are not about punishing people. They are about revealing what's real so a person can choose to change." Anika nodded slowly. "Bravery," she said, almost to herself, "isn't loud." "Sometimes," Secret Agent X replied, "it's a whisper." Anika clipped her tablet back to her belt, tightened her pack straps, and started down the mountain, already listening for the next story the world might try to steal, and already ready to stop it. Not with fists, with steadiness, with truth, with a heart that refused to become a storm. So remember, young adventurers, stealing doesn't just take an object. It breaks balance, trust, and peace. And the right kind of strength isn't loud or flashy. It's choosing what's right even when it's hard. And so, high in the Himalayas, the Trident of Shiva remained where it belonged. Not because it was too powerful to move, but because someone chose not to take it. Anika Das didn't win that day with strength. She didn't defeat an army. She didn't claim a prize. She listened. She respected what was sacred. And she remembered that true bravery is often quiet. The Trishul teaches that balance holds the world together. Creation, preservation, and letting go of what does not belong to us. And sometimes the hardest thing to let go of is the desire to own what was never ours. If you were standing in that temple, what would you have chosen? Would you have reached for the relic, or protected the promise it represented? Stories like this aren't just about ancient mountains. They're about us, about the small decisions we make every day. To be honest, to be patient, to do what is right, even when it would be easier not to. Thank you for sitting by the fire tonight. Until our next adventure, remember, some treasures are not meant to be owned. They are meant to be protected. Good night, young adventurers.
Sunken ruins, deep and old, stories whispered, yet untold. Through the jungle's emerald screen, unseen wonders intervene, dusty scrolls and cryptic lore, calling us to distant shore. A thrilling quest, the die is cast, shadows of a fabled past, adventure's breath, a wild desire, setting every soul afire.